Welcome. My name is F. Tessa Robinson, and I am a counselor and a mom to two amazing autistic kids. Today I'm going to talk about surviving the age of 3. Like many people, I found having a child who's 3 extremely stressful and difficult, and there is a reason for it. To sum it up, it's hard to have a 3-year-old because it's hard to be a 3-year-old. Now, before I go further, I'm going to caution that a lot of what I say is going to sound counterintuitive. All I can ask is that you hold on till the end. So why is it so hard to be a 3-year-old? For one, there is a lot going on developmentally. Often we think of kids as miniature adults, but really they aren't. Their brains are immature and different from ours, and where the challenge comes in is that since we think of our children as mini adults, we often believe our children are capable of doing things they aren't developmentally mature enough for yet. For instance, if we tell our child not to throw something, we tend to think a 3-year-old can put it down and move on. Yet a lot of 3-year-olds haven't developed something called impulse control yet, which is the ability to regulate our behavior and control ourselves. So even when we ask them not to throw something, they may not be able to help it and they throw it anyway. And they aren't being bad or naughty when they do this, they're being a 3-year-old. Often our reaction to this is to punish them. And this is not only not effective, it is counterproductive. We may be able to get instant compliance and submission in the short term, but what we aren't going to get is for them to learn how to control their impulses in the long term. For one thing, punishing a child who hasn't developed impulse control yet for being impulsive is like punishing a child who is blind for walking into a wall. It's not something they can physically do. When you punish a child for something they physically can't do, your child doesn't learn anything and you just increase their sense of frustration. And frustration is one of those emotions that makes it harder for them to learn to control their impulses. So you're actually damaging their ability to learn impulse control. For another thing, punishment doesn't teach a child what they can do instead to control their impulses. What we have to keep in mind is that studies show that when we raise our children who are impulsive at the age of 3 with nonviolent methods, by the age of 5, they turn out to be well behaved and are able to control their impulses all on their own. However, children who at the age of 3 are punished, whether by spanking or other physical means, become more impulsive and are more likely to lash out violently at the age of 5. Once again, physical punishment may get you short-term results, but long-term you are shooting yourself in the foot. So if you aren't using violence with your impulsive 3-year-old, good news, they will grow out of it all on their own. Better news, there are ways we can teach our kids to control their impulses. It takes time, and it's worth it. And yes, this is true with autistic kids as well. My son is rather impulsive at the age of 3, and he would lash out and hit and bite others at times. But by avoiding punishment and teaching him ways to control his impulsivity, he can now control his behavior rather well, and he is almost 8. So what should we do with an impulsive 3-year-old who is having difficulty controlling their behavior? Well, for one, we have to experiment because different things work with different children. With my son, for instance, we would have bubbles in every room, and if he would get upset or overexcited, we would have him blow bubbles. This helped them to calm down and eventually got to the point where we didn't need to have actual bubbles anymore. We could just ask him, blow bubbles, and he would exhale and inhale and calm down. The other thing to ask is to ask our children reflective questions about their behavior. This works even with nonverbal autistic kids. Questions such as, what do we do when we cross the street, instead of telling them not to cross the street without us? Or if they throw something, asking them, was that a nice or not nice thing to do? Asking them questions about their behavior forces them to think and reflect on it and develop mindfulness about what they are doing. Another thing that helps is allowing our child a redo if they mess up. For instance, let's say they hit us when they want attention. We can stop and say, redo, and this lets them know that we are trying the whole attention getting thing again with appropriate methods that we might have modeled with them in the past. So this is just a brief overview of all the ways that you can teach your child to manage their behavior. And there is a lot more information out there. A book I highly recommend is Stuart Shanker's Self-Reg, which I am not affiliated with in any way, by the way. And if you are trying to implement these and having difficulties, keep a few things in mind. We as parents don't have to be perfect. Sometimes if we're frustrated, we just have to leave the room and calm down and take care of ourselves. Both of my kids have seen me do it, and it is something that my son now does when he gets frustrated. He goes to his room to calm down. The goal is not for us as parents to never get frustrated or angry or upset. It is to model healthy ways to cope with those emotions. The other thing to keep in mind is that even if you struggle with teaching them ways to self-regulate, if you avoid violent methods of child rearing, your child will grow out of the impulsivity by the time they are 5. Both of my kids did. It is very hard to have a 3-year-old, and it gets better. Most importantly, show compassion towards yourself as a parent, and take some time to take care of yourself. Remember, taking care of ourselves is an investment that we make in our ability to take care of our children. And if you're really struggling with this, feel free to look at my webpage and see about setting up an appointment. On a final note, if your child is older than 3 and you have been using methods that haven't been working, it's not too late to change your approach. It will take longer to see results. However, if you are consistent, change will happen. I hope you found this video helpful. I put out new videos on topics on Tuesdays, and feel free to let me know what you want to see me cover. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.